Oh, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Chamber of Mayhem! Are you ready to rumble? Moonlight! This is my time now to flash you all uncensored DRAYZERA! This is my time now to flash you all uncensored DRAYZERA Uncensored! DRAYZERA Uncensored!
Welcome back to DRAYZERA Uncensored, and we have got an interview right here in a village near Swindon with the one and only, the Love Machine, Nick Lovell. Hey, how are you doing?
Pretty damn good, mate. How about yourself?
I'm feeling great as you dropping me off at the train station. True story. Right, yeah, so while we're on our journeys here, we can talk about the pitfalls of poetry. You yourself have been in the poetry game for 3 to 5 years, am I correct?
That's right, yep. Just coming up to 5 years now.
Neat. And because of that, and I've been performing for about just over a year now, and I have seen quite a lot of pitfalls that a lot of performers fall under. Now, you yourself have seen it all, you've done it all. Well, I say that as if you climb Mount Everest, but I mean to say that you yourself have literally done so much in the poetry game, and you've seen people rise and people fall, am I correct?
I've certainly seen people rise. I've occasionally seen people stumble on the way as well, and there are a lot of little traps you can fall into in poetry that will affect the way audiences view your performances, the way audiences read your poems.
So what pitfalls are we talking about then, Nick?
First off, poetry voice. Be it the dry, dusty page poetry voice or the over-emphasised, over-hysterical slam voice. They're both voices that have become sort of prevalent across the poetry scene, and they're both things that audiences find really, really irritating, but poets don't seem to be able to stop themselves from doing.
But then that becomes a stigma, doesn't it? So let's say, for example, a slam event has a high percentage of poets themselves, right? And therefore, poets like what the other poets say, because if you say that other poets don't notice it, then therefore to their audience, and the audience being a high percentage of performers / writers themselves, then they feel, man, this is great stuff. Do you see where I'm coming from?
I do, but it's not so much that poets enjoy poetry, any kind of poetry voice. Even those that do it themselves, they'll often do it themselves, but then say, oh no, I didn't like that. It was very much done in a, in slam poetry voice, and it's something people have to get away from. Be yourselves when you're on stage. You don't have to overdo it with a poem. Quite often, if a poem's hugely overdone, you can lose an audience with it. I've done it myself. It's a horrible sensation. You think you stand there, you think, God, I'm giving this my all, and I've lost the audience. Why? It's because you're giving it too much sometimes.
Do you feel that what you're saying is that it becomes way too choreographed, it's way too, let's say, copycat? So let's say, for example, let's not mention names, but let's just say that an archetypal performer that, let's say, many people know of, right? And therefore they're like, yeah, I really love her stuff. Therefore, is it sort of inherent in their mind that they copy, or do they legitimately want to copy that person?
I think quite often it's not so much that they're copying, it's just because they've been so impressed by that style of poetry, they want to do something similar, and quite often you can end up in a situation where you end up with so many people performing in that style that the originator becomes lost, the brand becomes cheapened, almost like when you end up in a situation where markets are selling hundreds and thousands of knockoffs of designer brands. Those that have got the designer brand have people looking at them saying, well, yeah, but is it real, is it not, is that genuine, is it fake? And quite often, especially with slam poetry that is overperformed, the audience can feel the same way. It can become so overperformed, so emotional, that it is obviously fake, and that will lose you an audience every time, especially in a slam.
And as a result of what you say, do you feel that poetry in that regard, it becomes, especially slam poetry, has become almost political?
political within sort of poetry politics, sometimes yes. I mean, it's
Can you elaborate poetry politics, just so we can, so that people that may not know what you mean, just to flesh up the bone?
There are some names in poetry that carry greater weight than others. In the same way, if you're friends with a certain group, a certain clique within the poetry world, and you go to their slam, chances are you may perform slightly better than someone who wasn't friends with them, regardless. You're not looking at the quality of the poetry necessarily, but just purely on who knows who. It's not a massive thing in slam poetry, but there have been slams where the results haven't been, shall we say, consistent with either audience response or with quality of poetry. It seems to be more about who sounded the most like one of the judges.
I see. So, as a result of that, do you feel that this right here will become a problem in the future? Because let's face it, poetry 5 years ago is nowhere near as popular as it is now. Because like 5 years ago, right? And I liked writing 5 years ago, but I never really heard of slam poetry or poetry performing. Now, I'm not saying that I'm sounding ignorant, but I'm saying that nowadays more people know about slam poetry and poetry in itself. So do you feel that moving forward, as we gain more audiences, as we gain more scope, do you feel that this will become a problem moving forward?
Hopefully not, because it is something that is being acknowledged now within the poetry world. There are poets saying, well, hang about, poetry voice, really, it's not helping things, be yourself more. And that is the advice I give to anyone. Yes, there are some, especially within American slam poetry, there are some horrifically overacted poems that do remarkably well. Maybe that works well in America, I don't know, I've not performed in America, maybe one day. But certainly in Britain, acting a poem to a point is fine, but once you start overacting it, it changes a poem from being exciting, from being interesting, from involving you, to almost shutting you out. Almost look at how deep my emotions are compared to yours. And that when it gets like that, it's not good for poetry. Poetry should be natural. It should be about people trying to be who they are and expressing their words, their thoughts, so that everyone can understand them without necessarily the need to become almost hysterical behind the microphone.
I see. Well, saying this, right, now you said earlier that certain people, let's just say, you say that certain people have far more of a clique within the poetry community, and let's say, devil's advocate, let's just say that the same person that is within the clique, they have their own style of poetry, which is either similar or the same as this, what you call a poetry voice. Now, do you feel that these people, for them to stay at the top, right, or the proverbial top, do you feel that they want people to almost, not necessarily copy their style, but essentially not be themselves? Because surely, by what you're saying, if there is a small degree of problems, then maybe that certain individual or individuals are like, well, let's just keep going, because at the end of the day, I want to stay on top, I want to make that money.
Well, good luck to them if they're making money in poetry. If they could drop me an email telling me how they've managed that one, I'd love to hear it. The problem is when people start changing their style to match a certain style, especially in slams. If they're aiming to win and they change their style to match that style, then you end up in almost an X Factor situation, where every slam winner sounds the same in the same way as every X Factor Christmas single sounds the same.
Yeah.
You end up with just the one style rising to the top. I mean, sometimes it can be area-based. Certain cities, certain towns can have a sound that becomes prevalent within their poetry. That can be a good thing, but when it becomes too widespread, when everyone starts sounding like that, then it's a bad thing, because the individuality, the creativity that should be there within a poetry scene is lost because everyone's trying to be the same. Poetry isn't about being the same, it's about being different, it's about being yourself. Anyone can copy,
Yeah.
It's far, far better to write your own blank sheets. You know.
Yeah.
Yes. Take the good things you see in other people's performances away. Have a think about it. Think about how you can do something of your own that way. But the whole formulaic, it's a slam poem, so it's got to flow together and it's got to start quite slowly and then rise up to a crescendo and there's got to be so much emotion in my voice. Really, please spare me.
I see. Interesting. So, alright, so onto this. So you say the poetry voice, while it is not a problem, it's still existent, but would you say that because of this, do you feel that because people are certainly copying other styles rather than being themselves, do you think that potentially another issue that maybe could be linked, maybe not be linked, do you think there is plagiarism in poetry?
Oh God, yes, there is definitely plagiarism in poetry. There are so many examples uncovered every year of absolute reading someone else's poem, changing a couple of words and banging out a virtually identical poem. There's so many cases that occur every year. Anyone who says there's no plagiarism in poetry is blind, I'm afraid. It definitely exists, it's definitely there, and it always has been. Now, how do we stop plagiarism? How do you stop the rain falling?
Yeah.
You know, you can't. But when it crops up, it does need to be treated quite seriously. Often, when there's a case of plagiarism, you will see people excusing, apologising, trying to justify. At the end of the day, if it was someone else's words and you've put your name to them with minor changes, you're not writing poetry. You're just copying out someone else's stuff, and anyone can do that. It doesn't take a poet. You could do it with a photocopier.
All right. So I've got, while you were talking, I've got a solution potentially to how to sort this out. Let's just say Hammer and Tongue, Apples and Snakes. They're two of the biggest poetry companies in the country, yeah? And what if maybe there should be some sort of governance? Let's say, for example, I don't know, in school, exam boards, they have their own plagiarism committee. Why don't poetry have that?
Cost. At the end of the day, it would cost a small fortune. I know that for schools, if they suspect there's plagiarism on a paper and they send it off to have it analysed, it can cost £100 a paper. Now, £100 a poem, you think how many thousands of poems are written every day. The cost would just be prohibitive. Also, because of the nuances of poetry, plagiarism can be quite subtle. Two lines can look very different on a page, but say exactly the same thing. Now, if it's one line in a poem that does that and it just compares to another line in another poem, that's not plagiarism, that's just similarity of thoughts. But when every single line in the poem corresponds to another poem, then it, regardless of how differently it's written, then it's plagiarism, plain and simple, and it should be, it should be stopped. There's no real sanction against a poet that plagiarises. There's no sort of agreement amongst publishing houses. That, Jesus Christ, you just drive through a red light there, mate. There's no agreement within within publishing houses that, oh well, if a poet's been guilty of plagiarism, we won't publish them again. There have been many cases of poets that have been caught plagiarising quite often 3 or 4 poems that have been published. Apologising, saying, accidental on my part, whatever, and then they're published again the following month. When there's no sanction there, really, there's nothing to stop people from doing it. So the only real sanction is being outed in the poetry world and the disapproval of your peers.
Right, okay, well, on that note, as we are heading towards Swindon Station, I think we should end there. Thank you very much, Nick, for the interview.
Thank you very much for coming down and performing yesterday, mate. It was an absolute pleasure.
Cheers. Well, anyway, thank you very much, and cheers.
Alright, Moonlight Army, that was Nick Lovell interviewing him. It was awesome, it was fun. Cheers very much, buddy. Yeah, so Moonlight Army, welcome to DRAYZERA Uncensored. A bit of a different style of format this time. Usually I talk, make an intro, and then boom, interview. This time it's the other way around with boom interview, and then I'm gonna chat about stuff. So if you like that style of formatting, then let me know on the comments below, alright? Because at the end of the day, your feedback matters! Okay, so Moonlight Army, let's chat about a topic which is close to my heart, and it's wrestling! Because, you know me, I like to talk about a whole ton of topics on DRAYZERA Uncensored, from my love life, to my ex life, to my poetic life, to all my life. So, let's chat about wrestling, and let's specifically talk about Alexa Bliss. Let me explain. So, Alexa Bliss is a wrestler that debuted on the SmackDown roster last year. And before that, she was in NXT. But, to be fair, she was really sparingly used in NXT and only slowly gained momentum towards the end of her tenure. And you know what? In my opinion, Alexa Bliss is the future of the women's division in WWE. Not only that, but I believe that within 20 years' time, or after that, because she is still young, Alexa Bliss is a future Hall of Famer. Mark my words. Because, let's face it, right? Her character development and her general character itself is absolutely amazing. I really find her character just absolutely stellar, in my opinion. As a talker, she is the best talker in the women's division. I even rate her higher than Charlotte. And she is not only a natural heat magnet, but should she have a face run, I think she will go well over with the crowd. And let's not forget also, she is a very good wrestler, and I don't think she's even scratched the potential yet. I don't think she's even begun, in my opinion. She hasn't, and I think she is absolutely young. Let me just double check on the information here. Alexa Bliss is a year younger than me, so she is 25 years old. 25 is baby, but 25 is a baby age in WWE. Honestly, she's only 25, and her early life, I mean, her actual name is Alexis Kaufman. Born and raised in Columbus, Ohio. Been involved in sports since the age of 5. Softball, track, kickboxing, gymnastics, cheerleading, blah blah blah. She also spent time competitive bodybuilding. Okay, alright. Interesting. Yeah, she had a developmental contract in 2013, and look at her now. It's amazing. It's amazing. It's unbelievable. And you know what? She's got it. She's got it right in droves. And something interesting to note. I think it was WrestleMania 30. Yeah, WrestleMania 30. When Triple H made his ring entrance, right? There were 3 women, I think. Yeah, there were 3 women there. I think there were more than that, but yeah, there were 3 women in particular that were masked. And the 3 women, who are they? Charlotte, Sasha Banks, and Alexa Bliss. And that shows you, Moonlight Army, that Alexa Bliss is not only thought well highly by the WWE brass, but she gets it. She absolutely gets it, in my opinion. And, in my opinion, she's already well away into being a star. I will say though that while I am a little disappointed as to her losing the belt to Naomi, I understand, but I believe that Alexa Bliss deserves a WrestleMania moment. Now, this year, if she doesn't get it, fine. She's not even into a year of her main roster career. But seriously, I think she deserves a massive WrestleMania moment. And I'm not saying this with bias because I have Alexa Bliss as my Twitter cover photo on my personal Twitter. No. I just feel, no lies, that Alexa Bliss, is honestly somebody that should not be taken lightly. I mean, yeah, honestly, all of her matches have been interesting. She has great character development and so on. And her offense is good. And let me just say, by the way, that I am so happy that we're in an era where women's wrestling is wrestling! Not none of these bullshit bra and panties matches and all that malarkey, because even when I was a kid, when the Attitude Era was around, like, I didn't want to see bra and panties matches. I want to see good wrestling! And we're in an era where we've got Becky Lynch, we have got Alexa Bliss, we have got Charlotte, we have got Bayley, we've got Sasha Banks, we've got all of them, right? And we have got amazing wrestling. Or not just in WWE, but amazing wrestling promotions like Pro Wrestling Eve. So many amazing promotions up and down the country, up and down internationally. So much great wrestling. It's just amazing. I mean, it's just a great thing that in WWE today, the fact that they had 3 Elimination Chamber pay-per-view matches involving women in the SmackDown brand. That's unprecedented. And for today's WWE, and for wrestling in general, to have women's matches as the main event, it's just a regular occurrence. That is great. And it shows you that women are being respected far more. And it just shows that the technical acumen of women's wrestling is just great. I love it. I absolutely love it. And it's just important to know that women's wrestling is on the up, baby. And let me ask, please tell me your opinions on Alexa Bliss, because like I said, I'm putting it knife through butter. Alexa Bliss is better than Charlotte. Or if you don't believe she's better than Charlotte, I believe that within 5 years' time, Alexa Bliss will be a bazillion. She will shoot her out of the sunset, and it will be bliss. So yeah, before we get to the Poetry in Bed Poem of the Week, I just want to quickly have some updates about, well, my life that maybe I've not put on social media, I guess. Because I think not only this is going to be a short episode, and I need to fill a bit of time, but anyway. Right, so Moonlight Army, first and foremost, my book, Broken Circuit Boards, coming out in June, and Alexandra Chambers, she is going to be illustrating the book. I'm really looking forward to it. It's gonna have some illustrations. It's gonna obviously have a front cover, all that stuff. I don't want to reveal too much, baby. But yeah, I really am pumped and excited for it. At the end of the day, I'm honored to have met her. I met her unexpectedly in Lincoln. Well, I say unexpectedly. I knew I was gonna graduate her as via Gemma and James of Mouthpiece Poets. But yeah, it was a welcome surprise to meet such a talented artist and a wonderful person. So shout out to Alexandra. Shout out. Another bit of news is that I am performing as extensively as possible. End of the day, I feel that I just want to go everywhere. And I was legit going to perform in Torquay on Monday, but I just realised I didn't read an email that I have work until 6:30 on Monday. Oh my god. And I'm on a 0-hour contract. I'm too good at my job. Oh my god. But you know what? It's cool. I love working at Curve Motion. For all those that don't know, I work at a roller skating place. I can't roller skate for toffee, but hey, I work there, man. It has a lot of fun perks, and the staff there are glorious. Alright. Yeah, I suppose is that all the news? Yeah, shall I think? I don't know. Is that it? Oh yeah, another bit of news. Yeah. I'm going to be collaborating with certain people. Well, I can't reveal who these certain people are. It's a bit of a mystery. Mystery! Right, Moonlight Army, this is now time for the Poetry in Bed Poem of the Week. And this is Chloe Jacquet, who, have I pronounced her name? Chloe Jacquet? Jacquet. It's sort of French last name. It's not jacket as in what you wear, it's Jacquet, with the C and the K and the U. Okay? C and the Q! The Q! And U. Right. So this is what she said. They asked her to show me a poem after seeing her perform in Swindon, and I said to her, show me something that I've never seen before. And then she wrote onto me in an email, "Hi! It's an exclusive, never been shared before. I'd appreciate it if you could plug my social media at Chloe J Poetry." By the way, Moonlight Army, Chloe J Poetry. That is on Twitter, that is on Facebook. Like her page and Chloe J Poetry. Find her out, I'll link it to you in the description. And if you can send me a copy of the sound clip, that'll be ace too. Well, I'm going to do one better, because when this comes out on Saturday, you will hear it. It'll be auto done. So I ain't sending you sound clips. You're listening to the damn podcast, Chloe. Just like everyone else. Woo! So, this is her poem. I have not read this before, so I am doing this as some sort of a reaction kind of thing. Oh, quick, something that I've just completely forgotten before I do her poem. After chatting to Nick Lovell at his house before we did our interview, he gave me the idea of maybe doing one cover poem if I do a headline set or a mega long set. Now, that's actually a decent idea, because I have sort of done one before. When Faye Roberts wrote this poem about friendship that I commissioned for her, that I asked to be commissioned for the allographic project and such, I thought, yeah, screw it, I'll do it. And you know what? I've decided to myself, you know, I may do covers in the future, but this right here is a proper, I don't say proper because what is a proper poem? It is a poem within the pamphlet of Leanne Moden. Now with permission from Leanne, on March the, is it March the 3rd or March the 4th? Hold on a second, let me double check it. On March the 3rd in Coventry, on my headlining set for Fire and Dust in Coventry, I'll be performing Shaving Grace for the event there. And hold on a second, I'll show you something interesting. Listen, listen to this. I'll give you a quote. She said, yeah, I'm more than welcome to cover her poem, and she said she's not quite sure how Shaving Grace will work quite well when performed by a bloke, and she's happy for me to do it, and damn straight I'm going to record it, Leanne. So shout out to Leanne Moden. Her stuff is amazing. I'll also link you to her Shizzle Whizzle. I mean, she is my favorite poet of all time. She blows a lot of poetry. I think she doesn't deserve the beauty. She doesn't deserve the praise she gets, even though she's doing amazing well for herself in the Nottingham area, the former Fenton Laureate. And yeah, a quick thing, the vlog of where I went to Crosswords Open Mic, the one that is hosted and curated by Leanne Moden in a mysterious cave, on YouTube Tuesday in a hashtag Zero Vlogs episode. Woo! Right, by the way, this is it. This is Chloe Jacquet with Camera Obscura. Goes it like this. There is a moment when two people look at each other and their faces disappear, and all that remains is look. There is a moment when two people kiss and their thoughts disappear, and all that remains are their lips. There is a moment when two people love and their bodies disappear, and all that remains are their hearts. There is a moment when two people fight and their spirits disappear, and all that remains is nothing. Woo! That is some good shizzle whizzle, Chloe Jacquet. I love it. That's some awesome stuff, Chloe. Really appreciate your stuff. That is awesome. I am really looking forward to hearing more of your stuff in the future. And yeah, Chloe, an amazing poet, an amazing writer. I'm glad that you've come back from the wilderness. For all those that don't know her backstory, she left the poetry performing spoken word, whatever you call it, scene. And she returned with a damn vengeance! I think she won a slam, I can't remember where. Was it Hammer and Tongue? I don't know. Yeah, she won a prestigious slam around her area, and boom, shakalaka waka, she is back on fire. Yeah, so definitely check out Chloe J Poetry on her social media, on Twitter, on Facebook, all them links, all that good stuff. So yeah, Moonlight Army, yes, it is a bit of a short episode compared to the 1 hour masterpiece that was last episode. I think, by the way, I think I'm going to try and make these episodes around half an hour. But what I do realise is, once I get into a big, intense debate and discussion with somebody, such as I did with Carly last week about Japanese culture and the ins and outs of what people need to know if they want to visit and or live in the country. If it's gonna last an hour overall, then what can I do? Anyway, Moonlight Army, this is DRAYZERA Uncensored. Tune in next Saturday for another awe-inspiring, amazing episode. I know I'm being biased, but screw it. Why don't you plug something that you like? Anyway, Moonlight Army, thank you very much. This has been DRAYZERA Uncensored, and cheerio. Censored. DRAYZERA Uncensored. Ha ha ha.